The alien commander was once a name that echoed through the stars, a figure known for victories that shifted the balance of entire wars. With their powerful gaze and towering presence, they were both feared and respected. Troops would follow them into the jaws of death without question, knowing that under their leadership, victory was nearly guaranteed. They had earned their rank through countless battles, carving out a legacy of strength and precision. Their reputation, built on decisive victories, was unmatched. But that made them a target, not just for enemies, but for those within their own ranks. It all came crashing down during what should have been another flawless operation. Leading an elite unit, the commander was tasked with a vital mission deep within enemy territory. Every detail had been planned to perfection, or so they thought. But as the operation unfolded, it became clear that something was terribly wrong. Systems malfunctioned, critical intel was missing, and the enemy seemed to anticipate their every move. It wasn't just a coincidence. The commander, for all their experience, could see it. Someone had sabotaged the mission. Within moments, chaos erupted. Ships were destroyed, communications cut off, and their forces decimated. The few survivors who managed to return told tales of failure, and whispers began to spread. The commander, once a symbol of strength, was suddenly blamed for the catastrophe. Rivals, eager to remove a powerful figure, manipulated the narrative. Accusations of incompetence, recklessness, and even betrayal were hurled at them. How could they have let this happen? Their once loyal allies turned cold, distancing themselves, not wanting to be associated with the failure. The galaxy that once cheered their name now only spoke of them in disgrace. Without a trial, without a chance to defend themselves, they were abandoned. Transported to a remote, hostile planet, they were left to die, stripped of rank, stripped of honor, and most devastatingly stripped of purpose. This desolate world, with its unforgiving terrain and relentless storms, was nothing more than a death sentence. Their former comrades, those they had fought and bled with, viewed them as expendable. Anger festered deep within the commander's chest, not just at the betrayal, but at their own helplessness. How could those who once stood by their sides so easily discard them? It was a bitter realization. Loyalty, in the end, was a lie. There was no honor in the galaxy, only self-interest. Days turned into weeks as the commander roamed the harsh landscape, their mind a battleground of bitter thoughts. The planet itself seemed intent on breaking them. Brutal storms lashed at their body, wild creatures stalked their every step, and the barren wasteland offered little sustenance. Each breath became a fight for survival, and every step was weighed down by the sheer hopelessness of their situation. At first, they tried to fight it, clinging to the warrior they had been. But as exhaustion set in and their wounds multiplied, the strength that had once defined them began to fade. Without a weapon, without a purpose, what were they? Just a discarded relic, left to rot on a forgotten world. Their body weakened, but it was the soul-crushing loneliness that truly threatened to destroy them. The silence of the planet was deafening, and with every passing day, the commander felt themselves slipping closer to the edge of despair. There were moments when they questioned why they even bothered to keep going. Moments where the temptation to just lie down and let the planet consume them nearly overtook their will to survive. But each time, just as they were about to surrender to the desolation, something deep inside kept them moving. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was a final act of defiance. Or maybe, just maybe, they hadn't quite given up on the faint hope that somewhere, somehow, their fate could still change. The human squad moved cautiously through the rugged terrain, their boots sinking into the planet's cracked soil. Their mission was simple: scout for any signs of life or resources that could be salvaged. The planet was hostile, but they were used to being on the fringe, often exploring the places where others wouldn't dare go. Humans, despite being newcomers to the galactic scene, were notorious for their boldness and adaptability. They didn't have the advanced technology or physical prowess of many other species, but what they lacked in power, they made up for with sheer determination. The squad had been on the planet for days without encountering anything of note, until they stumbled upon something, or rather someone, they never expected. It was the alien commander, half buried under debris, battered and on the verge of death. At first, the humans couldn't believe their eyes. The commander's species was well known throughout the galaxy, a race of elite warriors. The sight of such a powerful figure reduced to this state was jarring. But instead of seeing an enemy, the humans saw an opportunity. Despite the danger, their curiosity led them to approach cautiously, their weapons still at the ready but without hostility. The commander, though barely conscious, sensed them before they even made their presence known. Their instincts kicked in, honed by years of battle. They staggered to their feet, eyes blazing with suspicion. In their mind, humans were just like the others, opportunistic and treacherous. Weak. The commander expected the humans to finish what their own people had started, to either leave them behind or kill them outright. When the humans moved closer, the commander lashed out. It wasn't much, a feeble attempt to defend themselves, but it was all they had left. The humans, however, didn't respond with violence. They were cautious, keeping their distance, but instead of attacking, they communicated with calmness. It confused the commander. Why weren't they being treated as a threat? The more the humans tried to help, the more the commander's distrust grew. In their eyes, no one could be this altruistic. They had already been betrayed once. They weren't about to be deceived again. Despite the commander's aggression, the humans remained patient. They didn't flinch or retaliate. Instead, one of them, clearly the leader, spoke softly, explaining their intentions. They didn't want to fight, they wanted to help. This was something the commander couldn't understand. They were too weak to keep up the pretense of resistance for long, and eventually, their body gave out. The humans quickly moved in, not to harm, but to assist. They patched the commander's wounds, gave them water, and shared their food. As the commander drifted in and out of consciousness, they couldn't shake the feeling that this was some kind of trick. Why were these humans helping them? What could they possibly want? The humans could have easily left them to die, but they didn't. The commander's distrust ran deep, but there was something undeniably strange about this. It was puzzling. The human leader, a stoic but empathetic officer, made the decision to delay their mission and assist the alien commander. The rest of the squad was hesitant at first. They knew the stories of this species' prowess in battle, but they trusted their leader's judgment. The humans were pragmatic, but they also had a stubborn sense of doing what they felt was right, even when it didn't make sense to anyone else. They set up camp, giving the commander time to rest and recover, offering them shelter and protection from the planet's elements. The commander, though still too weak to move on their own, watched the humans carefully. They couldn't reconcile the image of these fragile beings with the kindness they were showing. In the commander's experience, no one gave anything for free. The humans tended to their wounds without asking for anything in return, without making any demands. It unnerved the commander. Why go to all this trouble? What was their angle? Suspicion still gnawed at the commander, but they couldn't deny the fact that without the humans' intervention, they would have been dead. The thought of accepting help, especially from humans, was a bitter pill to swallow. But what choice did they have? With each passing hour, the commander's body slowly regained some of its strength, and with that came the realization that the humans weren't acting out of malice or for some hidden agenda. They simply helped. Though the commander remained guarded, they couldn't help but observe the humans more closely. There was something about their dynamic that intrigued them. The humans worked as a team, no one individual holding themselves above the others. They bickered, joked, and showed camaraderie that was foreign to the commander's own experience of rigid hierarchy and solitary leadership. There was something strange in their resilience, a quiet determination that didn't stem from physical strength, but from their collective will. The commander, despite their misgivings, began to feel a seed of curiosity take root. Perhaps they had misjudged humans all along. Yet trust was something the commander wasn't ready to give. Not yet. Even as they rested, the commander's mind raced. Could they afford to rely on these humans? Was this truly an alliance, or merely a temporary convenience? Time would tell, but for now, the commander had no choice but to accept their help, albeit reluctantly. The humans, meanwhile, went about their tasks with a strange sense of normalcy, as if saving a hostile alien commander was just another day's work. They didn't see it as a grand act of heroism, just something that needed to be done. And as the night settled in, the commander's skepticism slowly began to shift. The humans were unlike anyone they had encountered before. They were unpredictable, yes, but not in the way the commander had feared. There was something else at play, something that the commander couldn't yet define, but whatever it was, it kept them alive. For now, that was enough. The planet offered no mercy. Each day brought new threats, whether from the blistering heat during the day or the frigid cold at night. The winds howled, carrying with them dust and debris that stung the skin and made every breath a struggle. As if the weather weren't enough, the wildlife was just as deadly. Massive creatures with razor-sharp teeth and claws prowled the landscape, hunting anything that moved. The humans, outnumbered and under-equipped, had no choice but to adapt quickly to survive. Despite the odds, the human squad worked seamlessly together. Every task, no matter how small, was shared. Whether it was scouting for food, setting up defenses, or maintaining equipment, they moved like a well-oiled machine. The commander, still cautious and wary, watched in silence at first. It was clear these humans had faced adversity before. Their resilience was undeniable. What surprised the commander most, however, was their camaraderie. They weren't just a unit following orders, they were a family. Each one trusted the other with their life, a concept foreign to the commander's experiences with their own kind, where personal glory often outweighed loyalty. Slowly, the commander began to contribute. Their tactical mind, honed by years of battle, kicked in. While the humans fought with grit and determination, the commander offered strategy. They pointed out weaknesses in the environment, helped the humans set traps for the predators, and suggested efficient ways to ration supplies. Though still physically weakened, the commander's sharp mind became an invaluable asset to the group. They didn't lead, but they supported, their expertise filling the gaps in the humans' knowledge of warfare and survival. As they faced one challenge after another, something began to shift. The humans continued to risk their lives, not just for themselves but for the commander as well. During a particularly fierce attack from a wild beast, the commander witnessed one of the soldiers throw themselves in harm's way to protect their comrade. The sight of such selflessness struck the commander deeply. Among their own kind, such sacrifice would have been rare, if not unthinkable. Here, it was given without hesitation. One evening, as they huddled around a makeshift fire, the group exchanged stories. The humans, always curious, asked the commander about their home world, their people. The commander, still guarded, gave brief answers, unwilling to share too much. But then one of the human soldiers, perhaps sensing the commander's reluctance, offered a story of their own. They spoke of a battle they had fought, of a friend they had lost. The pain in their voice was raw, real. The commander, who had always believed humans to be weak, was taken aback. The loss, the loyalty, the courage, it was no different than what the commander had experienced among their own kind. In that moment, the commander felt something unexpected: empathy. These humans, who had been dismissed as insignificant by the galaxy, weren't so different after all. They bled, they suffered, they fought, just like the commander. The rigid beliefs that the commander had clung to for so long began to waver. But with this realization came inner turmoil. The commander had been taught that power and strength were everything. Weakness was to be exploited, and loyalty was just a means to an end. So why were these humans, who had no obligation to help, risking their lives for them? What did they gain from this? The commander wrestled with these questions, their mind a battlefield of conflicting thoughts. They had been betrayed by their own kind, strong, powerful beings who saw them as expendable. Yet here were these humans, weak by comparison, offering them protection, even at great personal cost. It didn't make sense. As the days passed, the commander's wariness began to soften, though they didn't fully understand why. There was no singular moment where trust was suddenly granted, but rather a gradual change. Each day brought another small gesture, another moment of camaraderie. The humans had proven themselves time and again, not through grand displays of strength, but through their unwavering resilience and loyalty to each other, and strangely enough, to the commander. One night, while sitting in the dim glow of the fire, the commander found themselves opening up. At first, it was just fragments, a mention of the mission that had gone wrong, a passing remark about their betrayal. But the more they spoke, the more the words flowed. The bitterness, the anger, the feeling of abandonment, it all poured out. The humans listened, not with judgment, but with understanding. They didn't try to offer solutions or tell the commander how to feel. They simply listened, giving the commander the space to finally voice the pain they had been carrying. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the commander felt something akin to relief. The burden of betrayal, once a suffocating weight, seemed just a little lighter. The humans didn't offer false promises of vengeance or grandiose solutions, but their presence alone was enough. In their own quiet way, they showed the commander that survival wasn't just about physical strength. It was about endurance, about finding those who would stand by you even when the galaxy turned its back. The alliance between the humans and the commander, once fragile and uncertain, grew stronger with each passing challenge. There was still a long way to go, and the commander still held on to their doubts. But trust, slow and cautious, was beginning to take root. And in that trust, the commander found something they hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As the days stretched on, the human squad scouted further into the planet, often searching for anything useful: resources, technology, even remnants of the battle that had led to the commander's downfall. It was during one of these scouting trips that they stumbled upon something unusual. A piece of wreckage, twisted and burned, but still carrying intact data logs from the commander's ill-fated mission. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than debris from the failed operation. But the humans, meticulous and thorough, managed to extract valuable information from the wreckage. Upon reviewing the logs, the human leader's expression grew tense. They gathered the group, including the commander, and explained what they had found. The logs were fragmented, but there was enough to suggest something far more sinister. Details of communication blackouts and overridden security protocols pointed to intentional sabotage. The humans, who had seen their own share of political corruption and betrayal, recognized the signs instantly. The commander hadn't failed out of incompetence. Someone had made sure the mission would collapse from within. At first, the commander didn't want to believe it. The betrayal by their people had already been hard enough to accept, but the idea that this entire ordeal had been a setup was too much to process. Could it really be true? The commander had always believed that, while alliances could shift and power struggles were common, there was still an underlying code of honor among their kind. The thought that they had been betrayed so deeply, by their own species, no less, left a bitter taste. The human leader, ever pragmatic, spoke up. They told the commander that in human history, such treachery wasn't uncommon. Rival factions, driven by greed or power, would often target those who posed a threat to their ambitions. They explained that sometimes, those in power would frame the strong to secure their own positions. The commander listened, still skeptical but increasingly uneasy. Could the humans really understand the depth of this betrayal? But as the humans laid out the evidence, piece by piece, it became harder to deny. The mounting proof was undeniable. The sabotage was planned, calculated, and carried out with precision. Someone within the commander's own ranks had set them up to fail. The weight of the realization hit hard. The betrayal they had felt before seemed like a wound, but it was a mortal blow to their very sense of identity. They had been a loyal servant of their empire, fighting for the greater good, only to be discarded and framed as a scapegoat for reasons they couldn't yet understand. And now, here they were, left for dead on a forgotten planet, while those responsible for the treachery likely rose to power in their absence. Anger surged within the commander, but so did something else: clarity. Their people had turned against them, but these humans, creatures once considered insignificant, had risked their lives to uncover the truth. The commander's bond with the humans, once based on necessity and reluctant trust, deepened. They were no longer just a temporary alliance born of circumstance. The humans had seen the injustice for what it was and had, without hesitation, taken the commander's side. With the truth now staring them in the face, the next steps became clear. Justice needed to be served, but how? The humans, practical and resourceful, began to discuss a plan. They talked about getting the data logs off the planet, about finding a way to broadcast the evidence to the galaxy. If the truth could be revealed, those who had orchestrated the sabotage could be exposed. The commander, initially silent, began to speak up, their tactical mind once again sharp. They strategized with the humans, detailing how best to approach this. Even weakened, they were still a warrior, and their knowledge of galactic politics and military tactics was invaluable. It wasn't lost on the commander how strange this situation was. Here they were, conspiring with humans, beings they had once dismissed as weak and inconsequential. But as they discussed their options, the commander couldn't help but feel a surge of respect for their companions. The humans weren't offering help out of a need for glory or personal gain. Their loyalty wasn't transactional, it was genuine. They wanted justice, not just for the commander but because it was the right thing to do. That kind of loyalty, built on compassion rather than ambition, was something the commander had never experienced before. The commander's thoughts turned inward. They had spent their life driven by honor, by loyalty to their people and their empire. But now, that loyalty felt like a hollow shell. What was honor if it could be twisted and discarded so easily? The commander began to understand that there was more to strength than brute force or unwavering dedication to a cause. Strength could come from unity, from standing together not out of obligation, but out of respect and shared values. A shift took place within the commander. The old beliefs, the rigid structures they had adhered to for so long, began to fall away. In their place, something new grew, a belief in a different kind of strength, one that didn't rely on power or fear. The humans had shown them that there was another way to fight, another way to lead. And for the first time in a long while, the commander felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was no longer just about clearing their name, or seeking revenge against those who had wronged them. This was about fighting for something greater, justice, integrity, and the loyalty that the humans had shown them. The commander, who had once viewed humanity as little more than a curiosity, now saw them as allies. More than that, they saw them as equals. With a deep breath, the commander made a decision. They would trust the humans fully. Together, they would fight not just to reveal the truth but to set things right. The path ahead would be dangerous, and there were no guarantees of success. But for the first time, the commander felt that they were not alone in this fight. They had found something far more valuable than vengeance. They had found solidarity. And with that, the commander was ready to face whatever came next. The commander and the human squad had spent days formulating their plan, working together to find a way off the desolate planet. With a combination of human ingenuity and the commander's deep knowledge of galactic protocols, they managed to contact a neutral transport vessel, disguising their presence just enough to avoid detection. They soon found themselves on a journey back to civilization, a mix of tension and determination hanging over the group. Their destination was a neutral planet, a bustling hub of trade and diplomacy, where the commander's former allies held considerable power. As they landed, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The commander, once a war hero, was now seen as a disgrace by their own people. But with the humans at their side and irrefutable evidence in hand, the stage was set for a final confrontation. The humans, ever cautious, took point, ensuring the commander wasn't exposed too early. Together, they made their way through the sprawling spaceport, their eyes set on the heart of the enemy's operations. The commander's former rivals had grown complacent in their power, assuming that the commander had been eliminated and their betrayal forgotten. But as the humans and the commander approached the central chamber, the tension became palpable. The room was filled with high-ranking officials and military leaders, many of whom had once served under the commander. There was a moment of shock as the commander, thought to be dead, walked through the door. The silence was deafening, broken only by a few gasps of disbelief. The enemies who had orchestrated the betrayal were now face to face with the one they had left for dead. Though outgunned and outnumbered, the humans were far from defenseless. They had anticipated the possibility of an ambush, and in their typical fashion, they had planned for every contingency. Using their resourcefulness and tactical brilliance, the human squad subtly disabled key defense systems within the room. Small devices they had planted earlier disrupted communications, leaving the commander's enemies isolated and unable to call for reinforcements. The humans had turned the power imbalance in their favor without ever firing a shot. As the tension escalated, the commander stepped forward. Their imposing figure, though worn from the trials they had endured, still commanded respect. They began to speak, addressing the room, recounting the betrayal that had led to their downfall. The accusations were met with skepticism, but the humans, ever calm under pressure, produced the data logs they had retrieved. The evidence was undeniable. The logs showed how the commander's mission had been sabotaged from within, exposing the traitors among the ranks. For the first time, the room was forced to reckon with the truth. The shock on the faces of the commander's former allies was clear. No one had expected this alliance between the alien commander and humans. The enemies, who had counted on the commander's demise to secure their power, now faced exposure and disgrace. The room buzzed with disbelief and anger, but no one could deny the facts. The humans had played their hand flawlessly, bringing the truth to light with cold precision. In that moment, the commander felt something they hadn't in a long time: vindication. Their honor, once tarnished, had been restored. The truth of the conspiracy was now laid bare for all to see. The humans had not only helped them survive but had also brought justice to a corrupt system that had sought to destroy them. The commander looked around the room, their eyes locking with those of the traitors. There was no need for further confrontation. The evidence spoke for itself, and the galactic community would demand justice. As the dust settled and the truth spread, the commander found themselves standing at a crossroads. Their name had been cleared, their enemies were disgraced, but something had shifted within them. The old way of power, of blind loyalty to a corrupt system, no longer held the same allure. The humans had shown them a different kind of strength, one rooted not in dominance but in unity, resourcefulness, and compassion. The commander made a decision then. When offered the chance to return to their former rank and continue serving their people, they declined. Instead, they chose to remain allied with the humans. It was a bold choice, one that sent ripples through the galactic political landscape. But the commander knew it was the right one. They had found something far more valuable in humanity than they had ever known in their own kind, a strength that came from cooperation, from standing together not because of obligation, but because of shared values. The humans, too, had gained something from the ordeal. Their actions had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. In helping the commander, they had proven their resourcefulness, their tactical brilliance, and most of all, their unwavering loyalty to their allies. The galaxy had always viewed humans as a lesser species, weak and insignificant, but that perception was beginning to change. As the commander stood alongside their human allies, they looked toward the future with a sense of purpose they hadn't felt in years. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and the galaxy was still a dangerous place, filled with corruption and power struggles. But with the humans at their side, the commander felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they had not only survived but had reshaped the narrative of what it meant to be strong. The story didn't end with simple redemption or revenge. It ended with the promise of something greater. A new alliance had been forged, one that had the potential to change the course of galactic history. Humans, once dismissed, were now on the rise, and the commander, once abandoned, had found a new purpose in fighting alongside them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it was filled with hope.